So the next few weeks videos are all going to be focused on troubleshooting your homeschool, helping you figure out why things maybe haven't been clicking along the way you want them to, and what you can do about those things so that you can go into the next semester with some optimism that things will be better. So, the first reason why homeschool has maybe not been working for you may be because your homeschool is not aligned with your family. A lot of times, particularly if people dive into homeschooling without having done a lot of research, maybe it was an emergency situation, you just needed to get started right away. And so you grabbed the books, you brought your kid home, and you just started. And sometimes when we do that, we don't align our homeschool with our family because we don't know how to do that. We don't know what our options are. And so typically, what we end up doing is aligning our homeschool with three different things that pull us off course and make things more frustrating than they need to be. The first thing we often align with is the public schools. We figure, well, maybe we're not 100% sure we're going to stick with homeschooling for the long term. And so we want to make sure that our child is in line with what their peers are learning so they can seamlessly go back into the public schools at some point. Maybe public schools are completely off the table, but you don't know what else to do. And so you just default to that mode and you start following with what they're doing because you don't really have any other idea what else you could do. Sometimes we follow along with the public schools because we assume that education is somehow more official. It must be a standard education, kind of the education that everyone is aiming for. And we assume that if we follow this education, then our children are going to turn out well, they'll have everything they need, and we'll probably feel a lot more confident because we're going along with a system that somebody else has created. The reason this is a problem is because the public school system, even just the curriculum, not even looking at the environment, but just thinking about the curriculum, the things that they teach, the materials that they use to teach, the approach that they use, is not a good fit for the vast majority of kids. There is one type of learner that does very well with that approach. The other three kinds of learners do not. And so if you've been struggling, it may be because you're aligning with a system that does not fit your family, does not fit your kids. And so the second thing that we often align with is somebody else's idea of the perfect homeschool. Again, this is typically because we don't really feel comfortable or confident in figuring out our own thing. And when we see it working for someone else, we go, oh, well, I'll just do what they're doing. They've figured out a great system. I agree with this person's values. We think the same. I want the same kind of education for my kids. And so we'll just do everything that they're doing. And so you ask them, hey, what curriculum are you using? What's your schedule like? What's your routine like? What kind of materials do you use? You bring all of those things into your home, and then you assume it'll work for you because it's working for somebody else. Now, the problem with that is that kind of the same with the public school thing. It might not be a good fit for your family. Just because it works for somebody else does not mean that it's going to be a good fit for you. Your kids are not the same as your friends' kids or your neighbor's kids or your pastor's wife's kids or whatever. Your kids, even if they have similar maybe issues or interests, are not necessarily the same kinds of learners, and you are not the same kind of homeschooling mom. So even if there's a lot of similarity between your family and another family, that doesn't mean that what they're doing will work for you. The third thing that we align with is our assumption of what homeschooling should look like or is supposed to look like. Maybe you actually have done a lot of research and you've identified maybe some different vloggers or bloggers or homeschoolers in your local area or whatever that you think, ooh, I like what they do. This looks like a good fit for us. And I think we can bring this into our family and this will work. But you end up coming up with these assumptions that because that's what they're doing, that's what you should be doing too. I've heard all of these things about how if you homeschool with the classical method, you have to do this, or if you homeschool with the Waldorf method, you have to do this. If we take these ideas as rigid and inflexible, and we kind of come in with the assumption that if I try to mess with this at all, it's going to break it. It's not going to work. Then we get married to a methodology rather than being flexible and responsive to what our kids and our family needs. It's a great idea to do a lot of research and to look at the different approaches, but you have to remember that at the end of the day, your family is unique. And the way that you implement these things might look very different from the way other families implement them. You could take 10 families who all homeschool using basically the same kind of approach or methodology, and you may come away with 10 different ways to do that methodology. You may see similarities, there may be some overlap here or there, but that doesn't mean that you have to take those specifics and bring them into your family. You always 100% have the right to change things however you need to make it fit for you. And just because you really love the general philosophy of a particular approach and you love all of the things that that approach's founder or the families that tend to follow it all believe, doesn't mean that you have to do things exactly that same way. So, what is the solution for this? The solution is to learn more about the different methodologies that are out there. If you dove into homeschooling without taking time to learn about your options, then you're always going to default to what other people are doing or to what the public schools are doing because there's some safety there in saying, well, that seems to be working for them. So we're just going to do what they're doing. Then I don't have to panic. I don't have to worry about doing it wrong. We'll just do it their way. But the more you learn about different methodologies and the more you see all the different ways that people do that methodology, the different ways they customize it, the different ways they make it flex, the different ways that they accommodate different learning styles or children that have learning disabilities or whatever, the easier it is for you to use that methodology as a base, kind of play with it like Play-Doh. I'm going to sculpt it and mold it and make it look like this for us. But because you have a solid understanding of kind of the underlying philosophy and foundation of the ideas that go into that method, then you have the confidence to say, okay, well, I really love this aspect and I'm totally comfortable doing it this way. This part, I like this, but I think what's going to work better for us is to approach it like this. So the more knowledge you have about the different methodologies, the easier it's going to be for you to be able to create the kind of education and the kind of environment and the kind of homeschool approach that is going to work best for your family. And when you do that, everything comes into alignment and it is so much more enjoyable. It is so much easier. It is so much less stressful because you're not relying on other people and trying to shoehorn your family into their mold. Your family is unique, your kids are unique, your thoughts about education and what you want your children's education to look like, what you want them to learn is unique. And you get to use those things as your base and then build from there the kind of education and the kind of environment and the kind of approach and structure and everything that is going to work best for your family. Be sure to read my article on methodologies. I particularly recommend the simplified homeschooling approach if this is your first year, or if it's maybe year 2 and things have just always been a struggle. Sometimes the best thing to do is to strip down to basics and then build back up from there after you've established a more solid and enjoyable and less stressful routine. And simplified homeschooling can give you that. You'll learn more about that in that article. And then I have another article on simplified homeschooling all by itself, which I'll also put in the description. I would love to hear if you think maybe this is what has been bugging you in your homeschool. Be sure to like and subscribe if you learned something new. Keep an eye out for my next troubleshooting video coming next week, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.